I think LFM is still in their initial stages of growing as an HGC team, and it definitely has been showing that they've been improving, and they're getting better every week. I still don't think they're at their potential yet, and that they still have a ways to go until they're actually contesting top teams every game, but I'd say we're expecting a 3-0 against LFM. We really want to get as many 3-0s as we can, and dropping a game is a pretty big deal. So we're going to try our hardest, not underestimate them, and just try to play a clean game and just close it out as fast as possible.
Tempo to me is the obvious super team of NA. Their drafts are pretty insane. I mean, we've analyzed them to start preparing up for this weekend, and like, they just play different stuff every game. It's really weird. It's hard to prepare for Tempo. I think Tempo's biggest strength and weakness actually is their draft. Sometimes they do like an absolutely crazy draft and it just works out for them. And then sometimes they do a crazy draft and then it doesn't work out at all. Even though they lost to Freedom, I still feel like they might be a harder opponent to play against.
One of the most difficult teams for LFM to have to go up against. Part of that is the drafting, part of that is the extreme flexibility that Tempo Storm has, but also the aggression. Tempo Storm has kind of shown us two distinct different playstyles, more respectful versus Team Freedom and Team 12, but versus a team they feel like they can dominate, they come in, they play something like a Dahaka main tank with a bunch of melee assassins, right? They bring the aggression right from the start of the game. They try to get those early snowball victories, and that shows. They are statistically the most lethal team in North America, J-How.
Yeah, they rank first in a lot of categories when it comes to kills per game, KD ratio, things like that in North America. They stand out above the rest. Despite dropping that series to Team Freedom, it has not deterred them from being a dominant team in their own right. I think that for them kind of humbled them a little bit. And as you said, the flexibility of this team, they've played 40 different heroes in their series coming into this weekend. That's second most to Space Station, who's kind of way up there. But the flexibility of this team is their strength, and we'll see if Draded is right, if it also could be one of their weaknesses.
Yeah, and they also curbed back their deaths per game on average too, to having that be lower than Team Freedom, while also having the most kills, which puts them by a landslide the highest KD ratio. In NA, we're looking at 1.79. Team 12 is next at 1.22. Tempo put the hurting on their opponents, and it might start with this first battleground, but we'll see what LFM can do. We're going to Sky Temple for Game 1, chosen by LFM with bans. We're going to see LFM ban Towers of Doom, Battlefield of Eternity as the ban for Tempo Storm.
Sky Temple here, LFM. This is where they picked up their first ever game victory way back in week 1 against Space Station. They felt comfortable going onto this battleground multiple times. We'll see if Team Freedom, or excuse me, Tempo Storm has anything that they have up their sleeve. Or they said, Cattle said, we want to just get a simple 3-0 and be done with it, right? That's exactly what they're trying to do. Maybe that keeps them standard. Maybe that keeps a few more tricks hidden for maybe a later series, and they just keep it standard and try and play that way. But for LFM, I think that's exactly what they want. They've had this penchant to just, if they get behind, they find ways back into it, and we'll see if that comes about here in the series.
Yeah, that makes me wonder what kind of playstyle Tempo Storm would like to exhibit, because Tempo Storm have a lot of different options for how they want to play this out. They could try to out-macro LFM. LFM has been getting better and better in the macro game, but it's still a favored area for Tempo Storm, because LFM are still trying to ramp up versus these higher skilled teams who have been in HGC for longer. Or do we see Tempo Storm draft this kind of double melee assassin composition that we saw versus, I think it was Team Freedom on this map with the Malthael and the Kerrigan, and just start looking for those early picks, invading camps, getting those kills, feeling like they're the stronger team in their mechanics, and from that they can just snowball really fast victories that LFM can never get the opportunity to try to recover from.
That's something they do really well, and that comes from experience. And Tempo Storm has an incredible amount of experience. Tempo, they're trying to take off those big X factors that can come in and really just explode in a team fight, and one of those is going to be Genji.
No Genji. Talking about LFM and some of their priorities, actually contention for them is Hanzo, but otherwise a lot of that is what you would see normally, right? And that does include Hanzo. No favored battlegrounds between the two, no crossover maps that they both have. For LFM, they love Sky Temple. Tempo Storm, They play here, but it's not a favorite battleground like we might see from Tempo Storm. Something like Dragonshire has been kind of a fave. So for them, it's kind of a mystery, both of them, as they approach this first game.
Hanzo being hovered here, and Greymane tends to be kind of that next level assassin that we see. And the way that these teams kind of play out, we actually have it to where instead of Psalm would normally be the Hanzo style, maybe the Genji style, but as it plays out, when it does come to this rotation, Greymane is normally played by Fan. So depending on the prioritization of heroes could affect the draft here when you ban something like a Hanzo.
Tyrael up. Tyrael, a big enabler of the super aggressive melee stylings of Tempo Storm. That usually would be paired along with later with the Malthael maybe in the next rotation, and then Kerrigan after the bans if she makes it through. They'll get that Tyrael. Greymane's still up though for LFM for Draded.
You remind me, it's like you kind of forget about Kerrigan because she doesn't really get played that often, and then you come to North America and she just kind of sneaks in. ETC Greymane, going to be the pickup, solid, tried and true there to have that ultimate dive slide, and then Greymane to try and be the finisher there. They'll obviously need a bit more damage to try and set some of that up, so we'll see what they come in, but a very solid start to the draft for LFM.
I wonder if Tempo Storm are at all worried about the Abathur. I think the Uther is definitely something to keep in mind here, as trying to take away from giving Greymane more of a dive possibility. Especially if they end up getting more melee assassins. I think this is going to give us a lot as to whether Tempo just want to get Tyrael because they feel he's a very strong pick, or if they want to use him as an enabler. Yeah, they're going to use him as an enabler. They get Malthael and Lucio. Look for more aggression to come, I feel.
Definitely. I think that when you talk about the dive potential and the Malthael in there, that's already a self-sustained composition, and you can basically complement that with a whole lot of other dive. And you mentioned the Abathur. Abathur is yet to be played for LFM, but this is Sky Temple. It is with an ETC Greymane, so you could clone the Greymane. You have the Mule available for a map like Sky Temple. And then if you're worried about the weirdness and the big X factors, Kerrigan is one of those, and it's being hovered.
I don't blame them. It's not just Tempo. Other teams are playing this double melee assassin, and everyone is struggling to figure out a way to deal with it. But Tempo Storm were the first to show it, and they are dominant with it. I don't blame LFM at all for hovering that Kerrigan ban.
Trendsetters. LFM, I don't know if they're debating it or whether they're trying to, well, they are debating it. They're looking at Li Ming now. Back to Kerrigan.
Yeah.
Li Ming is close to K, so maybe just clicking around there.
Swapped over.
Oh, or just go into Li Ming. It takes away mosh pit interrupts. That's one thing that it does.
That is true.
If you're really worried about team fighting, worried about trying to make those big plays to really punish a team, mosh pit's one of the biggest heroics in the game. So maybe they just go down the route of let's cross our fingers and go right in.
The Blaze ban for Tempo Storm. LFM, they were trying out Blaze a little bit versus Freedom. And Bunker slows down momentum a lot when you've got that all-in kind of composition.
I'm sitting there like, well, that'll probably be Malthael, and that'll probably be Glaurung, and then I'm just like, who knows? Like, it's Tempo Storm. It could be anybody. We might see it. We might
get rid of it.
We might see a Zeratul at some point pop up. I mean, there's just so much flexibility out of this team that makes it hard to prepare. So LFM, I love that they're keeping a very standard, very strong draft, a very tough to kill draft. ETC, Greymane, Tychus, Dahaka all have good defensive tools and a little bit of self-sustain when we come to Dahaka, ETC, and they're all big playmakers. So for LFM to have this style of draft, I am a big fan of it.
Yeah, Draded's Greymane. You've got Swab's Magoo, his Dahaka. Remember, he had the game-winning play versus Gale Force Esports in Game 5, isolating a Tyrael so that he couldn't get a sanctification to allow Gale Force Esports to finish out Game 5. So expect him to be making sure that he is watching out for those kinds of plays, as he has done it once before. And probably way, way more times before when you count the open division, scrims, all of that.
Swabs, Magoo, and Dahaka, just they go hand in hand. I mean, if
Peanut butter and jelly.
If Dahaka had 2 hands.
When you have adaptation. And there it is.
4 melee and a Lucio. 3 melee assassins, a tank, and a Lucio.
Until someone stops this, I don't think we'll see any change from it. So it's time. LFM, they're going to get Malfurion.
Oh, that scares me a lot.
Ice Block will be nice at 13. You've got Twilight Dream for the dive-in.
You have to be the aggressor if you're playing Malfurion. Malfurion has no burst healing. None. Unless you get to level 20. And even that's minimal. Technically, you get a little bit of burst off of Moonfire, but in terms of surviving this type of burst, it's almost impossible. You think about options. So with the Tychus, I want to see Relentless Soldier at 7. Greymane can dive in, get into Worgen form, has armor. You could probably, I would be a big fan of Block Party here if I'm ETC. Go into more survivable options and then look to be aggressive with it.
Be aggressive with that. You get Nature's Cure as a way of trying, if Som hits these giant combos with a lot of people through a choke point, which he's been known to do, you have Nature's Cure to try to get people out before the Sulfurous Smash comes down. It's a way of getting rid of that. LFM has a very survivable composition. They have a comfortable composition. Can they take out Tempo Storm's aggressive melee composition? Let's see as we head to Sky Temple for Game 1.
And on Sky Temple, it's going to be LFM in the blue. That's going to be Figgy on ETC, Draded on Greymane, T on Tychus, Swabs on Dahaka, and Aware on Malfurion.
And for Tempo Storm in the red, we're going to have Glaurung. He's playing the Malthael likely, as we've got Som on his Kerrigan, Fan playing Ragnaros, Caterpillar on Tyrael, and finally June will be playing the Lucio.
June making sure that he keeps his KDA nice and pretty there on Lucio, as he takes great pride in that and leading here in North America. Fan second highest, as we see LFM already camping out just a little bit, seeing if they can maybe catch somebody in rotation or catch Tempo off guard.
At one point, he has never died on Lucio in 5 games. And in this case, it kind of makes sense. Lucio is not going to be the target. A lot of times, we've seen Kerrigan be the target from this. Maybe Ragnaros, maybe the Malthael. And June just sitting in the back until he finds a boop to send someone in. There's just so much barreling down at you with this kind of comp. And we're seeing the rotation squad enabled by that Lucio and his movement speed.
The wave clear is pretty good when you have that rotation of Tempo Storm.
It helps the stacking of Fan too.
Oh yeah. Easy stacks, and they're already going to turn their attention towards the siege camp and see if they can just pressure. I mean, when you have the siege giants, it forces out a defense, and you have to step forward because those siege giants do have a decent range. And then maybe you can catch somebody that's trying to come out and defend them. So they might use that as a setup tool. So we'll see Tempo Storm continuing to rotate. The insta-clear here. Fan sitting at 5 stacks currently on his queue. Instead, they're going to use that siege giant to just kind of hold somebody in the bottom, and they're going to rotate up and look for a camp in the top lane, it appears, and see if maybe they get that push in the top lane. Yeah,
this is kind of a Team Freedom style choice to run and go get the bruisers first. Maybe also respecting seeing that the Giants were taken earlier on from Tempo Storm and not wanting to put themselves at the whims of Tempo Storm, their aggressive rotations, their camp invades that they have been known to do, especially with this kind of composition. Tempo's going to use the Molten Core right away to clear out that Bruiser's camp and set them up nicely to have their Bruiser camp pushing behind this, though.
You know, this is one of the few teams that actually make this call, and it is Tempo Storm using that Molten Core, and I like a lot of the times that they use it. They find very good reasons to use it. They find very good value out of it, because anytime that much earlier, are you really going to get that much more? Glaurung's going to get caught out. He's going to go down. That's first blood. LFM, that's got to be a confidence booster when you can start the game out getting first blood. Yeah, that was nice. Glaurung was pretty far up, although he played that very well. Even going down, knowing he was going to have to use a Ray Strike again, getting into position so it would teleport him to the other side. But with the rotation in of Tychus, the final grenade hitting him, though it knocked him back a little bit, was enough damage to get that first blood.
against the Malthael, and that gives a little extra push. It forces Ragnaros to go down to the bottom lane too against Swabs to make sure that he doesn't get too much done there. And for LFM, they still have their Giants available if they want to try to take that before this Temple phase.
You know, a lot of times, Gilly, I'm a big fan of In the Rhythm against so many melee. And if I'm on the side of LFM, I actually like the call of the bigger they are. It gives them the opportunity to single target focus somebody, to burst through one health pool and see if Greymane can try and finish them off. Isolate somebody and execute. And I think that's actually something that in certain circumstances, especially given these circumstances that are against LFM, I actually like that pick right now.
I'm checking out what Malfurion has at level 4 too. That's not what you were talking about, right? I got distracted for
the Tychus, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. For Malfurion though, having the longer entangling roots of deep roots and then persisting for a little bit longer as Glowron gets caught again from LFM. Nice couple of pickups there. But having that longer roots is going to try to keep some of this aggression, this melee deathballing at bay for Tempo Storm. LFM, they lose quite a bit on the temples though. They did focus heavily on making sure to get that pick on Malthael, the second pick, and pushing down at the bottom. They're still behind slightly in experience, and the structures with those temples did a number to their forts.
It did, and I am almost okay with it. I mean, you have to trade out something, and they had the Greymane, and the Greymane fit into this style of composition, allows them to use that, get structure damage. Dahaka going directly to the top. They've got Psalm in their sights. The tongue misses, uses his jump over, but Psalm so low. June with the peel dreided. Can he get there? Just out of range.
That was beautifully done by Psalm and June. Psalm to use the juke away from the drag, knew that was going to be coming in, and he had to dodge that to escape. And then Bud's coming in and having the speed boost away. Tempo Storm stops the staggered death, stops the picks. They steal in the meantime. The Giants, noticing that LFM had sent a lot to the top, hoping to get that pick. And Tempo Storm now are getting more of a presence here in this bottom lane after LFM have done a little bit of siege damage to it.
Yeah, and you know, they've given up a bit, has LFM, but they've managed to maintain the experience, you know, at least a little bit even by getting those few picks, getting a few structure damages. But as we know, with Sky Temple, your structures are your lifeline in this game, given the way that everything works and the objective works. So giving a little bit up is okay, but you can't continue to do that throughout the game. When you get those later kills in the game, you can do more with them. However, Tempo, they're not normally as adept to just giving up that many. As the game opens up and they start to try and get more of that structure advantage, you can trade out a lot easier if it's double Tempo phase, and you are going to find yourself ahead at the end of it all.
LFM has been not willing to take a big fight against Tempo Storm's melee compositions. As T running guns out, gets pulled into the combo. Cattle goes for the chase along with it. They've got the little bit of minion help underneath this fort, and it's just enough for them to get that kill, giving them heroic abilities and an insta-judgment.
Alrighty. Judgment into Sulfurous Smash into a Kerrigan combo. You ready for it, Gilly?
I'm so beyond ready. As I was saying before, LFM sort of loath to face Tempo Storm with this heavy melee rotations, with the Lucio, with the Tyrael too. Up to this point, they've been willing to just siege down on the bottom. They gave up the temple phases. They worked on just isolating somebody and getting those early kills. So where does that start to change? Probably right about now, which is why we saw Tempo Storm be able to get that kill. That slows things down. Dahaka's still on the top, but we're seeing Tychus start to make the rotation in. Expect that stock to start and the fight to break out.
There it is. They go for the combo. Some doesn't land. Isolation was used onto Kerrigan. Odin is out as well. They get the power slide in. No possibility for Mosh just yet, and the instant judgment in onto ETC.
In the sound barrier too, they can look to turn this. Fan is going in for his Molten Core. Combo comes in, taking out ETC. Psalm looking for more. Dreided takes advantage of that, taking him out, but Malfurion goes down too. We've got the Molten Core and Cattle taking out one target. Glaurung and June forcing back the others. 3 kills for the one sacrifice, the noble Kerrigan sacrifice. So Tempo Storm can get back in and take the rest of the temple shots.
And because of all the damage that they did to all 3 lanes, that's going to take down bottom fort. Likely to take down this. Likely, but not enough.
A sliver of health. A couple bricks. Maybe a door frame. That's what's left in that fort. Should be easy pickings if Tempo Storm can manipulate some rotations using some mercenary camps for either the top or the bottom. They're going to get the bruiser camp. That'll help out with the top one. Then we'll see where they want to go from there. LFM doing the same to get their bruisers, but they are falling behind in experience.
They were behind in experience, and when you look at the minimap overall, you see One fort down on the side of LFM, and the other two are terribly low, and all the forts on the side of Tempo are up there. Despite only being down that one level, again, your lifelines are the structures, and when it comes to the double temple phase that we're going to be facing next between the mid and the bottom, it's advantageous for Tempo Storm to just simply trade that out. I don't know if they will. They might just look to put their pressure on to LFM, but they are in such a great position that they can trade that out and still find themselves very far ahead.
Now the 13 dissuades LFM from staying out here any longer until they can get the same. Did get Relentless Soldier for that Tychus. Wondering if we'll even go as far as Neo Steel Coding at 13 or what he wants to get there, but just more survivable talents for him. Ice Block is going to help a lot too. Isolation was used and Malthael falls. LFM continuing to get these picks to hold their own in this game.
But that camp pushing top, Gilly, is going to create so much havoc. And if they do not get somebody up here, Psalm will just push this down. And again, structures being your lifeline, these will dwindle away. And we see LFM, they're turning their eyes on the boss. This is a better trade for Tempo Storm because they'll take down the keep wall. They'll get a little bit of keep damage. That boss, because it's only an 8-9 minute boss, it's not going to get that much damage to that bottom temple. It's up to LFM to not only get that boss, but try and soft push and take the bottom temple to try and maximize that value.
Tempo Storm has been phenomenal, and even though they have lost Glaurung a few times now with LFM punishing positioning, going for those rotations, doing what they can to stay in this game, Tempo Storm has been doing a great job of adapting on the fly. And for Tempo Storm, there was a time when I remember that kind of adapting their game plan when things would not quite work out was a place that would be an issue for them. So it's awesome to see that even though they got ahead, they're losing out on a couple of picks here and there, they're adapting in a way so they're still getting something out of it. They're still maintaining mobility around the map, just making sure that they can either hold their lead or at least make sure that they're not losing out anything else.
They opted to send Dahaka to the top instead of sending Dahaka to the early part because of his positioning on the map. That allowed the rest of the team to go up. Now Dahaka can be on that middle temple, be able to brush Stalker in, and force a 5v5 here. So good rotations all around. I expected them to do it a little bit backwards, a little bit earlier. Instead, they're making the plays, and they're actually forcing it onto Tempo Storm, who is at the moment having a little bit of trouble. The bottom temple's still active. See how this plays out. There's
the Odin, there's the stock. Swabs goes in and catches Malthael. The whole team turns, blows up Malthael in an instant. No self-heal, no Tormented Souls goes out, and June was way far away from the rest of the team, or from Malthael because of the drag. He was with the rest of the team, so he couldn't come in for the save. Tempo Storm lose their Malthael, but they will quickly rotate out, go somewhere else. I kind of wondered if maybe they were going to be willing to sacrifice some structures to try to just get to 16 first, but of course that would climb LFM back in experience. And between that and the picks that they've gotten, they are right there, neck and neck, with Tempo Storm now in experience.
We're 11 minutes in, and all of a sudden LFM has evened this up. They're up in kills 5-4, and they've been the ones that have been the aggressive ones. Generally, we've seen this composition from Tempo Storm just kind of run in, take some team fights, get a pick or two, and really turn things around. But LFM has actually turned the tables on them, and they are just pushing in, and constantly forcing the aggression out. We haven't seen the mosh pit pulled yet, but it is a constant threat against Tempo.
And they continue to get safer and safer the more LFM scales up. You've got Tunneling Claws now. That's going to help a lot if the turn of focus for Tempo Storm becomes Dahaka. We did get Neo Steel Coding for Tychus. Once he gets to 20 and gets Big Red Button, having the increase in duration for his Odin is going to be fantastic. You can get something well, you've got lots of different choices there for your ETC, but Bolt maybe, and he has Imposing Presence too, even just as a way of being able to add some more slows and have the attack speed slows. LFM has made it through that early game. They were willing to kind of sacrifice some of their structures in the early game to get some picks and just hold on until they could get more survivable.
But make no mistake about it, you can just as easily turn this around if you're Tempo Storm with one big fight. Glaurung already used his Tormented Souls. Figgy's just going to look for that opportunity. If he catches June too far forward, look for him to slide into that mosh. And I think Tempo Storm not willing to fight in that choke. They're just going to back out. Next temple phase, single temple. Both teams just trying to even up these camps. Tempo Storm taking care of the top. We'll see LFM take care of the bottom. Actually, they're just going to go ahead and rotate up. Siege Giants versus Siege Giants bottom. Top will have to be answered at some point. But LFM looking to try and maybe take control, complete control of this game.
We'll see how the positioning of Tempo Storm works, but you can see Fan deep in the back lines, potentially, as they're keeping an eye on Figgy for a Molten Core, and there's nothing to retreat to at that point. That combo was huge after the judgment, but Figgy's mosh pit was just as big, catching so many of Tempo Storm. Ragnaros went to Molten Core. Lucio and Kerrigan go down at the exact same time. There's just the one kill as ETC goes down, but with an isolation and the damage from the Tychus. Another one has fallen. That was Tyrael. It's just Glaurung trying to run to Fan's aid. He won't make it out. LFM Esports, a 4-for-1.
What is happening? Fan has a long way to go, and he's not going any further as the tongue has landed onto him. He does have a bit of armor, trying to get that movement speed, getting that self-sustain, but all that does is stagger the deaths. The boss Gilly, by the way, will be spawning soon in 30 seconds. With Ragnaros now staggering that death, that becomes a little bit of a threat. The Temple still here has a full channel. Things for LFM have taken a turn for the best, and for Tempo Storm, a turn for the worst.
I think Tempo was really expecting LFM to get scared from the aggression and run into that Molten Core. And Figgy said, no, we're just going to stay right here. We can deal with that damage. We're pretty tanky now. And Figgy, with that mosh pit, caught so many people. Even though the Sulfurous Smash came down, the damage had been done. And with that, LFM wins a decisive team fight versus the kind of composition that has been terrorizing the Nexus here in NA HGC from Tempo Storm. With that 2-level lead, Tempo Storm running out of options, runs straight to the boss.
It makes them desperate. This is more of a desperation call than anything. You try and trigger that throw pin. I think that they're unwilling to commit to it. I think they're just going to try and play it safe. LFM is dangerously close to 20. They have no idea. Obviously, the global definitely in favor of LFM. You can see on the minimap, Swab's hiding in the bush. He wants to make sure there's no gank at all. And all LFM needs to do is try and play for 20. They do not need to force anything right here.
No holy ground for Tempo Storm, even as Tempo Storm's positioning has gotten bolder and bolder, trying to see if they can catch anybody out here. The Aware, but the judgment on Draded. He uses the Nature's Cure, gets traded out for the moment. Commandeer Odin used, and now with 20 here, that's going to be the big red button for the longer duration, the longer armor, the power slide in, the mosh pit to follow. Kerrigan's gone, Tyrael is too. Torbus goes down, Lucio has fallen, and again, it's down to Glaurung and Fan, and this time it's going to be for keeps.
Are you kidding me? LFM comes out here, game number 1 on Sky Temple, 14 kills to 5. They're going to walk right through this middle keep, take this down, and that is game. This is unheard of at this point. LFM just comes in. They bring the aggression. They just walk right in, put their foot in the ground, and dare LFM to step forward. This is insane.
LFM get on the core of Tempo Storm to take game 1. I'm gonna reserve talking about the kinds of upsets that we've seen in NA HGC, but I'm going to reserve it just for now. But it's still, LFM getting that first win, it was dominant, it was well calculated, it was very understanding of their compositional strengths, the compositional strengths of Tempo. They've had plenty of games to watch Tempo Storm play this highly melee composition. There was no sanctification there was a judgment, but there was still a sound barrier. But Figgy found many an opening for a fantastic mosh pit.
Swab's Magoo onto Haka is terrifying. In that last team fight, he's the one that got the drag onto Kerrigan, who was in the back line, but Tempo was split heavily. Landed that, the slide over, got the mosh on the second person there as well. There were no interrupts. LFM has just said, we're taking the fight to you. When we saw their draft, as you said, the compositional strengths that they had were very strong. They were a very survivable composition. I worried a bit about the Malfurion. That was not an issue at all. But the compositional strengths of that relied on the survivability of that team, going the Relentless Soldier in case you were stunned out, finding different ways. That was a strong, solid composition, and they executed it beautifully. I am a bit stunned right now at the not just that they won, but the way that they won. They dominated that game.
You know who else was stunned? A lot of Tempo Storm because of those mosh pits. Let's take another look at that beautiful last team fight for LFM, because it was a darn good one. As you talked about, we've got the Dahaka to keep an eye on him, but the focus came on Draded and saving him here. That was huge, J-How.
Can we just pause it right here? because as it stands, we're actually getting Dahaka to come in on the flank side. This is the biggest part. If you actually just look on the bottom side there, that's where Dahaka's coming in. And his prime target is going to be Psalm here on the backside as we move it forward, because Psalm is right there. When the tongue lands, you've got everybody. And this is, if you pause now, you can just draw a line. As you see that the entire Tempo team is split. June is trying to make his way up to get any type of support over, but Swabs, again, landing that tongue there was the initiator. Biggie's going to come in for the slide, and that's where everything goes down in the circle of death here, known as the mosh pit, as we move it forward.
Yeah, he gets in there for a great mosh pit, even uses the tour bus too, but a Twilight Dream was great. It wasn't even needed for the tour bus to get the kill on Lucio, because the Twilight Dream on the back of that mosh pit was so good. And a lot of times we saw at the end of these fights Glaurung, or a couple of times, Glaurung and Fan being the only people left. So the first time that went in, we saw that the Ragnaros used a Molten Core. It was clearly a setup trying to force them back into the Molten Core. You'd have the swing there, that's a ton of stuns, and then from there you can sort of pick them off. That didn't work. LFM said, no, we're good. We don't want a Molten Core. And although you can add damage as a Ragnaros with Molten Core, the big deal is forcing them into that swing because of the stuns and then what you can do off the back of those stuns. So it was awesome. It was awesome for LFM, that fight, and then that final fight. Figgy, Nature's Cure to keep Draded alive on the initial pick. That would have been a much different fight if they didn't have that Greymane damage.
It's pretty insane the way that LFM played that, and they sat in that position. They got 20, and they were able to take that fight. That was just really impressive overall, LFM. If they can continue this type of performance, my goodness, that draft, the execution, it was a little bit slow to get started, but once it got rolling, they got a pick, didn't get much out of it macro-wise. Got a pick, didn't get much out of it macro-wise. But as the game wore on, those picks became more and more valuable. 14 kills to 5. 14 to 5 at the end of that.
Well, let's start with the map. It's Dragonshire, probably chosen by Tempo